morning. Today we're going to look at courage or comfort. Courage or comfort. What is it that you want to do in your life? Mel Robbins was on my radio show and she said, courage is a push. When you push yourself, you may not change the world or the laws, or you may not spark a social movement or civil rights movement. But she said, I'll guarantee you this, Frank, you will change something equally important. You will change yourself. My guest, Terry Yoffe, has experienced a great deal of change. As she told me, hey, life happens. And it doesn't matter what you are or how old you are, life happens. And she said, I never had a financial safety net. So not only did I have to change, but I had to learn to embrace change. Amazing woman. You're going to love her. Let's meet her. Terry is an executive and a business and communication coach. He's in the top 2% of global podcast hosts of the international extraordinary work, conversations about creating change. Terry, welcome to Life Altering Events.
Thank you so much, Frank. I am honored, delighted, and just thrilled to be here and join you today.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you. I've seen you, I've watched your, listened to your podcast. I've watched some of your things, and you're so impressive. You've had so many stops along the way. Tell the viewers some of these experiences that you've been through.
I like, at one time I would call it my story that I was embarrassed where I grew up, embarrassed by a lot until I heard Brené Brown say, own your story. And I said, that's fabulous. I'm going to take that and actually turn it into a journey as opposed to a story. And my journey, I grew up in a rather dysfunctional family. My parents were older. They were totally not meant for each other. They did not get along, and both worked. So we were left to our own devices. Nobody showed me the way. Nobody helped me find my way. And as a kid, I stuttered. I was left out. I had a lot of hurtful things happen. And somehow there was a part of me that survived, that said, I am due for more. Whatever that more was, I had no idea, but I was sure going to chase it. And this was really internal. I didn't do that well in school, probably because I was depressed. I had nobody to turn to, nobody to nurture me. So that was left to me. And I had my first heartbreak. I was engaged and he broke it off. And I never thought anyone would love me. And you can imagine how heartbroken I was. However, not so heartbroken, I took myself to Europe for 2 months, which I don't know how it happened. I can't even tell you, but I did, and came back, and life happened, and I had an opportunity to leave my parents' home. My mother was also a narcissist. So we grew up with a family of narcissists where beauty and attractiveness was everything. And I had that, but I had nothing else. I had the shell. And I made my way into New York City. I had a friend that had an apartment. She said, you want to? I said, I'm there. That was the second trajectory that changed the path of my life. So that living of the roof of my family, I got to grow up. Difficult, but I somehow meandered my way through and found my life in the fashion world. Where else would I be? The shell of attractive person, nothing inside, doing fashion shows and meeting people, but I was unhappy. And then I found my way to an analyst couch for 7 years. And that was another trajectory that totally changed where I was going in life. I worked really hard. He challenged me. I challenged myself. I cried a lot, but I started to grow up and I started to drop all the masks that were there to find who I am. And then I followed that and I did that and kept going back every so often. And I had a job with a fabric company and I got into Buddhism, another path for myself, right? Therapy, Buddhism, other modalities to help me grow. And I found a Buddhist retreat, didn't know anything about it, up in New Mexico in the San Cristobal Mountains, knew nothing. I signed up and I went. Here is a New York City sophisticate going to live in a bus with a sleeping bag. And you know, the bathrooms were for women. There were 3 stalls together. So anyone could be in there. You weren't alone. So I learned how to get over that. We bathed in the solar heated area. And it was a silent Buddhist retreat. You could not talk for a week.
Wow.
And we had the wonderful gurus of Joseph Goldstein, Jack Kornfield, and Sharon Salzberg, who were our leaders. And every night you would listen to them. And every morning you got up at 4:30, sat for meditation, ate, walked, did whatever. When I came back, it changed me immensely. Aside from therapy, that was the second most impactful experience that I had. I looked at the world differently. And from that point, I went about my business. I got fired. I got fired many times. So here's some lessons. I got fired. I did not have the luxury to sit around and cry. I had to find a job. At that time, I wasn't married. I had no safety net. So I had to get back on my feet and start looking. And I took whatever came along. So I always said yes. That got me to so many places, even today. I said yes. What could be the worst that could happen? People are afraid to say yes. Well, I don't have that experience. I don't know. I'm fearful. I was too. Didn't matter. I had to. And I had a business. And then I met my husband. I got married. And I got offered a sales job, a real one. And I didn't have the sales. And she said, so what? You know, fashion. It was a territory that I had. It wasn't just a sales job. It was a $650,000 territory. I said yes to. 3 years later, I took it to $1.3 million and decided I wasn't getting paid enough.
That happens a lot.
Yeah. And got an offer to go to Condé Nast, big magazine company with the New Yorker, which they had just bought. And that you couldn't even sell that magazine at that time. And I went. I was in the fashion department. I went to Europe. And clearly you couldn't sell fashion at that time to the New Yorker. So I had a little to do with the person that hired me. She wanted to fire me. And my husband said, why are you staying? Go. I said, no, I didn't do anything. And I stayed. She got fired and I got back hired. And I went to the travel category. So for the next X years, I took a category to the #1, travel. I traveled the world. I got to travel
Nice.
on a Concorde. I got to travel on private planes. And mind you, here's a kid from Queens that never thought they were going to amount to anything. But yet there was a fire and a hunger in me that I never gave up. I said yes. And that's a lesson for everybody. Say yes.
Absolutely.
Don't give up. And from there, I stayed and got enough. I was a Bon Appetit. I hated it. I don't cook. And I stayed there until finally I said, I've had enough. And my husband kept saying to me, start your own business, start your own rep company. I couldn't do it. I loved the golden handcuffs. I loved all the perks. I loved everything. However, I wasn't happy. And at that point, I knew better for all the modalities I had done. And I got up enough courage. So I started looking, and several people said, I want to hire you. But, you know, I said, okay. Left, got in my rowboat as my metaphor, and just made my way to another shore, not knowing what that shore was going to bring. But I knew I had to leave. I couldn't stay tethered to that, and untethered myself. And it was very difficult leaving that shore and all that money. And every time I'd go, I'd look back and say, am I crazy? But, you know, again, that part of me said, go, go. And I did, you know, extraordinarily well. And I did well because I had integrity, I had truth, and I was very, very fair to my clients. I never tried to screw them over. And I had an impeccable reputation at that point. So I got a lot of business, a lot of business. And then the landscape changed. And I had to stop doing that. And that was the conundrum. What was I going to do? I had no idea. And I started being the quintessential networker. I started looking around. And somehow I was going to go back to school and become a therapist because I loved going through therapy and I really wanted to help people, and didn't realize I had been doing that my whole life, creating change with others and myself, right? Creating change. If you want to change, you have to create change, no matter how difficult and how matter painful. It's worth it in the end. And I found coaching 20 years ago and I had to start in the basement. Who knew me as a coach? Nobody.
Well, that's really interesting, Terry, because coaching didn't become trendy until maybe 10 years ago, maybe, and particularly for women. And you did this 20 years ago, 20 years ago.
And people said, coaching, basketball, football.
Exactly.
That was what they said. No, executive business career. And some of my clients from sales said, I'll coach with you. That's how much faith they had in me. And from there, I joined the International Coach Federation, New York chapter, which was the second largest in the constellation, and worked my way up to president. And had a great, great run as president. And while I was doing that, I was also a member of an organization called She Runs It. That's what it's called now. And I helped co-found a mentoring program that I ran and chaired and got an award for it being one of the best programs in the organization. And today it still goes strong. So, and then, you know, coaching wasn't enough. 2.5 years ago, I started a podcast. My husband keeps rolling his eyes every time I say I'm going to do something different. And I said very clearly, if it doesn't work, it's okay. Didn't know anything about it, but I knew I wanted to do it. And what I do is 2.5 years later, I interview amazing, amazing people that have created change in their corner of the world. And it's in the top 2% globally of all podcasts. So I'm telling my journey because I'm an ordinary person that has done extraordinary deeds, that has set out to become who I wanted to become. I somehow had a vision for myself, and it wasn't living in Queens, getting married at 2 and having kids. That wasn't my vision. So I tell my journey because any one of us can become who they want to be at any age. I am an older person, north of 70, and I'm still going. The lessons I learned were say yes, don't say no, except if somebody's going to ask you to jump off a bridge. But say yes. What's the worst that can happen? Nothing. So what if you're fearful? I was too. Find what you want, what you're passionate about. At any age, you can do it. And I'm still going strong. I don't know what's next for me, but say yes. Don't be afraid. Don't let your limiting beliefs, which I had so many of. Oh, I'm not worthwhile. Look how I grew up. I'm not worthy. But I didn't let that get in the way of who I wanted to be. Who I wanted to be was stronger than anything that life could throw at me. And life threw a lot at me.
It certainly did. And listening to your story, Carrie and I had spoken a few weeks earlier, and it was so impressive that many, many people, the vast majority of people, will settle. This is as good as it's going to get. Nothing I do is going to change anything. I'm just going to be this. And I love what you said. They have a job and they may be doing well, but they're miserable. And it comes down, I think many of us have been there. I came through the corporate sector, same thing, making a lot of money. And it was, I'm not happy. The professional side's doing well, but this side is not. And there's more to it than doing that. And saying yes and jumping off a cliff sometimes is necessary. And then at the end, if it doesn't work, as you said, somebody say to me one time, I said, Frank, what are you doing? And I said, well, if it doesn't work, I was looking for a job when I found this one. Okay. So another door is going to open if you continue to move forward, correct?
Exactly. And that, I think the universe takes care of you. Every time my back was to a wall, a door opened. It didn't matter. When I needed money, I was in a real estate office. I was in a marketing office. I did HR. I did recruiting. Whatever came up, I had to make some money. Didn't matter. I didn't know if I was good or bad. I just needed to make some money. And that was my driving force. And it didn't matter to me. I had to pay rent. I had to live back then. And I think, shown a path. If I stayed on it, if I did the work, if I was willing to go through whatever I needed to go through, I was willing to do it. And being an executive business and communications coach, I understand everybody's issues. I've been through most of them, obviously, and that's what I help clients with. Help them to understand what's blocking them, what's stopping them. And it's mostly fear of talking up for themselves, fear of not being good enough, fear of uncovering they're an imposter, the imposter syndrome, which we all go through,
Yes.
and help them come out the other side. I can't believe when I look at my website, which is being redone, the testimonials and what I've done, I say, who's that person? Because I didn't become a coach until way later in life. So it doesn't matter. If you've got a passion or you want to do something, do it. Whether you're 30, 40, 50, 60 even, whatever, you can do it. My idol is Iris Apfel, who died at 102. She was a brand. She was a fashion brand until she died. And I keep looking at her and saying, okay, Iris, I'm right behind you. So
That's great. That is so good. One thing that impresses me so much, and I've talked to many other counselors and guidance and people, and they'll say, you know, Frank, the universe is constantly sending you signs, constantly, constantly. You said again, now most of us, it's a tap on the shoulder, we don't ignore it. And then it's a shove. And then ultimately it's a 2x4 between the eyes. And then it's like, okay, well, maybe now I need to go. What impresses me so much about you, Terry, is you get that little tap on the shoulder and it's like, okay, let's investigate this. Let's see. Let's try it. And the best coaches, in my opinion, are older because you've experienced it. And what you're talking is coming from the heart. And it's not, I'm reading a book and I'm on chapter 6 and you're on chapter 5. So I'm one chapter ahead of you, but I'm coaching, guiding you. You've lived it.
exactly. And I think that's what clients love about me. I'm very good at reading people. So
Mm-hmm.
when we do a coaching program, I have all this info that I send them to do, and then we get started and I can see where they're at. I can see their struggles. I've been there. So it's like, in a way, I'm mirroring them or they're mirroring me. And
Mm-hmm.
I've had great success with every client that, and they could be from any walk of life, entrepreneurs, successful people, VPs, marketing people who want to make changes. They just don't know how to go about it. They feel, I'm too old, like you said, but you're not. We can have a career at any age. People today feel, I'm 60 or 65, time for me to retire. That's the
Yeah.
societal norm, right? But you don't have to do that. I didn't follow it in any way. People got married at 20, people had kids. I didn't do any of that. And today
Mm-hmm.
I'm older and people are retired. All my friends, most of them are retired, doing
Right.
whatever. And for me, I have a passion and a purpose in helping people create change, to know they can make an impact and a difference, no matter what age you are, whatever it is. It can be small, doesn't have to be big, but
Mm-hmm.
to find something that fills your soul, that's fulfilling, that you can say, oh, I love getting up in the morning, rather than, whoops, there's the buzzer, I'll turn it off. You don't have to. Or and there are plenty of people that are retired that love what they do, and that's fine. You know, you don't, if you love what you do and you're having a great life, then that's fine. But there are many that feel unfulfilled. Now what can I
Mm-hmm.
do? And they look
What's
around
next?
and they see all their friends retired, and I'm the oddity, but I've always been the oddity. So for me, it's
Exactly.
nothing new.
One thing that I saw in the COVID years, that um, so many people 50, 60, I just said, I had enough. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to live another 15, 20 years and then die. It's time to do something. Did you see a big movement in that period of time?
A lot of people want to do something else, or yes, a lot of people, this whole time during the pandemic or after, people thought about, what am I, crazy? They had time to reflect, time to think, and they were at home. And they said, do I have to be in a toxic environment? Do I have to keep doing what I hate doing? And, that was when people started leaving their jobs in mass.
In mass, exactly.
They didn't want to do it anymore. And they said, I'll do something else. And that was, the shift in change. And today, leaders are being asked to be servant leaders. They're asked to listen. They're asked to be kind. They're asked to be human, not this stoic, toxic leader that
That's
really
right.
isn't relevant anymore.
You're
So
absolutely right
there's
on
a
point.
lot of shifts taking place, and still it's, the game, if you will, has changed. The landscape has changed. And some people want to change, but they don't know. So those are my clients also, people that want to change jobs, change careers, do something different, change within themselves. You can't change and go somewhere else or do something else unless you're willing to change parts of yourself, because they won't fit into the new environment that you want to go to.
Exactly. I interviewed Professor Edward Hess from the Darden School of Virginia.
Mhm.
He's a futurist. And he
Ah,
said to me, he said to me, Frank, manager, the term manager is no longer valid. It's obsolete. And I said, well, what do we need now? He says, we need facilitators
mm,
and we need enablers. And that's where, as people have left, there's been a brain drain. People leaving to move on to find their own thing or what else is going to make them happy. But then on the business side, it's what do I do now? Pounding on the desk didn't work well 25 years ago. It doesn't work well at all now. But we continue to have this mindset because we're slow in the corporate sector of, well, it's always worked this way. Well, it doesn't work anymore.
right. Exactly. It always worked this way. Therefore, we will continue. But that's not the norm anymore. The landscape has turned upside down.
Mm-hmm.
And leaders, you know, we all lead and come from our 5-year-old, unless you turn
That's a
your
great
eyes
point.
inward and grow,
Mm-hmm.
and it's as one of my guests had said, we're in the pandemic of not good enough. And that's how everyone feels. So if you're starting with that and you become a leader, well, if you don't feel you're good enough, how are you ever going to be truly successful? You're not. And it's
Exactly.
about, we all have trauma. We all have wounds. I have a ton of them, and they don't go away. They're still there. However, if you grow up and mature, they just are there. They don't
Mm-hmm.
impact your life. And for me, they became my journey. My wounds became my journey. So
That
there
is
you
a
go.
great line. Great line. My wounds became my journey. What a terrific line. Well, Terry, we're just
I
about
just
out of
made
time
that up.
here. I love it. That was perfect. I wrote it down. We're just
Use
about
it.
out of time here. Other than my wounds become my journey and say yes, what last thoughts you want to leave with the people around the world today?
Do what you want to do. Don't let fear get in the way. If you want to climb a mountain, if you want to go off and do something different, do it. We have one life. How do you want to live it? Do you want to live it with personal growth and the ability to say yes and find what you want? Or do you want to stagnate? One life. How do you want to live it? What do you want to do? Have a growth mindset or a fixed mindset? With a growth mindset, you can become what you want. And I tell my journey not to brag or any of that. That's not what I'm here for, but to share my struggles and my challenges and how they helped me get to who I am today. And if
It's
any of
outstanding.
you want to reach out to me,
Perfect.
please do. You can DM me on Facebook, on LinkedIn. My email is Terry@TryCoaching. If you just want to have a conversation, I'm open to it. That's where I start. If any part of you feels I want to make some changes, please reach out. I would love to start a conversation.
And ladies and gentlemen, I strongly encourage you to have that conversation with Terry. It can change your entire life and trajectory of your life. Now, as I said, we're just about out of time. I want to thank my good friend Terry Yoffe. He's showing the world that by embracing change and moving forward, better times and better people come into your life.
True.
Now, you can see this on my podcast called Life Altering Events. It'll also be on Parade Deck, my YouTube channel, which is also called Frank Sakari. We keep everything easy here. And I will send links to Terry, and she can post them everywhere in her world.
I will
If you use the
certainly.
YouTube channel, please subscribe. And let me leave you with this. None of us are in this alone. And the secret to walking on water is to know where the rocks are. And today, Terry showed us where many of those rocks are. Join us again next week. We get into another life-altering event. Terry, again, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Frank. This was wonderful. I so appreciate it. And you.
Thank you.